coming on the air with a curfew in Kyiv that just went into effect in Ukraine. So now none of the millions of Ukrainians still in the capital can leave for the next day and a half, even as Russia keeps on hitting buildings in residential areas with missiles. Ahead, the emotional plea from Volodymyr Zelensky to Canada for even more help. Plus, a lot of folks on Wall Street worry the longer this war goes on, the more prices are going to go up for you at home. And a decision tomorrow by the Fed has some worried about a potential recession. Why? Interest rates. We'll explain in a minute. And a man who claims he helped plan 9/11 might get a plea deal that could take the death penalty off the table. Why prosecutors are offering this up, even though they've wanted to take this guy to trial for more than a decade. Plus, some of you watching this show right now might be able to get a fourth COVID shot soon. We'll talk about who Pfizer thinks needs a second booster. And you know that fake German heiress from the hit Netflix show? Anna Sorokin, Anna Delvey, take your pick on the name. We'll talk about why she's fighting with the feds to stay in the U.S. and avoid getting deported to Germany. That's later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and for the next day and a half, Ukraine's capital is basically a city on lockdown. This 35-hour curfew is in place, but that's not stopping Russia from sending in more missiles, hitting right where people live. Check it out, just the latest attack on civilians at an apartment building in Kyiv. That's what you're looking at here. You see firefighters trying to put out the flames. They've been doing a bunch of work. I mean, look at that, right? Ukrainian officials say at least one person was killed in that strike. Now, here's the thing. A senior U.S. defense official is telling us that even with all these attacks from the air, the Russians haven't gotten much closer to Kyiv. They're still at least a dozen miles away. Russians also have not gotten into Kharkiv. They are relentlessly bombarding cities in the south, like Mariupol, like Chernihiv. You can see the spots in red, right? That is all the areas that Russia is holding right now. But overall, like no real major changes. And that could be dangerous if Russia feels cornered and ready to unleash even more. That's partly why the Ukrainian president wants more from the West, as he made his case to Canada's parliament today. Watch. That's just a couple of seconds of the fully 3-minute-long standing ovation he got from lawmakers. And in that virtual speech, President Zelensky all but begged for help, previewing essentially what members of our Congress may hear during Zelensky's address to them tomorrow.
They already killed 97 Ukrainian children. We are not asking for much. We're asking for justice, for real support, which will help us to prevail, to defend, to save life all of the world.
And now we know 2 Fox News journalists are dead because of this fighting. A veteran cameraman and a 24-year-old journalist based out of Ukraine. Their colleague, correspondent Benjamin Hall, is still in the hospital. We're going to talk in just a second about this extraordinary meeting of NATO leaders in Brussels that President Biden, we learned, is going to go to next week. But let's start on the ground with Hallie in Lviv. So, Hallie, talk about the goal of this lockdown in Lviv, right? Because people will be at homes, they'll be in shelters maybe, but it also means that they can't go if there are more attacks. And so far, there is no indication that Russia is going to let up on that front.
That's right, Hallie. No indication going to let up, but it's become so dangerous on the ground in Kyiv that they're asking people to do this. And in that time that there is this sort of lockdown in Kyiv, there are going to be no evacuations. They've made that very clear. So over the next 35 hours, no evacuations out of Kyiv. People are going to stay in their homes, and if that bombing starts again, that's the only time they're allowed to leave their home, get in those shelters and hunker down there. And it's good because people are listening to that. Those attacks that you just showed in Kyiv, a lot of people took heed of those air raid sirens and they went down into the basements. If they hadn't, that death toll could have been a lot higher.
You talk about a different location. We showed that map right at the top of the show, Hallie, and we're focusing obviously on Kyiv, the capital. You are further west in Lviv. In the south, in Mariupol, you had about 2,000 cars that did get out today, but the Red Cross is still saying the city is suffocated, their words, suffocated, with the lack of supplies. How does that get fixed?
Well, by getting these people out of there. I mean, it's been a disaster. Mariupol has been described as hell on earth. But the latest reports we got is that 20,000 people got out of Mariupol in 4,000 private cars. I mean, it's amazing. These are just regular citizens driving in there in their cars, picking up people and taking them out. But there's a big humanitarian convoy on the other side. It's been waiting for days to get in there. And it wants to bring in aid, and it's bringing in buses to get a lot more people out of there. it still hasn't gotten out of there. 20,000 people sounds like a lot, but it's only a fraction of a city of about 400,000 people. You've been doing a lot of work on the ground there, and you have this story, Hallie, of this boy who tried to save his grandma with the help of this humanitarian group from the U.S. Can you tell us a little bit more about them? Hallie, it's such a tragic story. Yeah. This 17-year-old kid with his grandmother and her beloved cat left the really hard-hit city of Sumy. His mother put him on a bus, sent him here to Lviv, to what they thought was going to be the safety of the West. The cat became ill on the journey. The grandmother became really anxious. She arrived here in Lviv. She collapsed. This American charity came to her aid. They got her vitals back up. For a moment, it looked like she was going to be much better. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't save her. The grandmother died. The kid just broke down. You could see the anguish etched on his face. Let's take a little listen to what he had to say, and I'll fill you in on the other side. What's next for you, Vlad? What are you going to do now?
I don't know. I called my mother. She will come here to...
Vlad's mother came here to pick up her mother's body and bury her, and that's part of the tragedy here, Hallie. When you say goodbye to your loved ones, you don't know if it's going to be the last time. It's difficult to watch, Hallie, and I know that it is important for you to shine a light on those stories. Thank you. Here in Washington, you had the president today signing a bill that would send help to Ukraine, $13+ billion worth of it. With the White House confirming really just a few hours ago that President Biden is going to head to Europe next week for an extraordinary NATO summit. And let's just point out here, that's rare. The NATO Secretary General only called this summit today. And it's not like NATO goes around all the time pulling in a bunch of world leaders with only a week's notice, right? In this summit, they want to talk deterrence and defense, those two big keywords as it relates to Ukraine. It's happening as the Treasury Department today is slapping sanctions on Russians connected to human rights violations, as well as the Belarusian president, Alexander Lukashenko, and his wife. And in a tit-for-tat, you had Russia now putting its own sanctions on a bunch of people in U.S. government, the people that you see on screen, President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, Defense Secretary Austin, and also against people who are not, in fact, government officials, like Hillary Clinton and the president's son, Hunter Biden. Joining me now from the White House is Mike Memoli. Mike, let's start with the news that you, frankly, and our team scooped 24 hours ago, that a trip to Europe was, in fact, potentially in the works for President Biden. We now know it is on. We now know it is on next week. What is the, and I don't want to use the White House lingo of, what is the deliverable, right, wearing my old White House correspondent hat, but, what are they hoping to get out of this other than the optics of these world leaders in the West coming together to stand united against Russia? Or is the optics enough in this instance?
Yeah, Hallie, let's start with that, because the optics are really important, especially important to this president in the way he's approached this whole crisis. To have as many of the 30, if not all 30, heads of state of these NATO countries around a table meeting to discuss this issue will be a very important and powerful symbol of the unity that President Biden has worked so hard to keep together during this entire crisis. Now, the substance is a little trickier, TBD, as the kids would say, because really, first, we might be in a very different place a week from now, a week from tomorrow, in fact, in terms of what is needed, what the NATO allies need to do together based on what Putin might do next. So there's sort of an element of we need to wait and see what's needed by the time they're meeting. That's why the defense ministers in NATO are all actually meeting tomorrow in Brussels, sort of a pre-meeting to maybe work through some of the thorny issues around, for instance, how to provide more air power, more assistance to Ukraine. It was interesting, Hallie, the president sort of made a little bit of a news an hour ago when he was signing that bill. He mentioned he's going to have more to say about what the U.S. is doing with Ukraine tomorrow. So that's maybe signaling, as we know, Zelensky's going to be speaking to members of Congress, that he might want to sort of have his own answer and show he's doing more as well. We're going to hit Capitol Hill in a second to talk more about that Zelensky meeting. But let me ask you, we mentioned those sanctions, and people's ears might perk up when they hear, well, wait a second, why was Hillary Clinton sanctioned by the Russians? Why was Hunter Biden sanctioned by the Russians? I know that the White House is basically dismissing them, saying, none of these people are going to Moscow anytime soon, so oh well. But what's the real deal here? Well, this is, again, to use that word, optics, right? The U.S. is sanctioning Putin, so Russia sanctions Biden. The U.S. sanctions Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, so Russia sanctions Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State. There's a little bit of tit for tat, as you said earlier, to all of this, but it is interesting to see some of the other names that were involved. Jen Psaki joking about not going to Russia anytime soon, not having any money in Russian banks that she's going to be worried about losing. And so that really has been the approach by the White House to really laugh this off, because some of the sanctions sanctions the U.S. has imposed on especially those oligarchs are packing a punch, they believe, they hope. These are really much more symbolic on the part of the Russians, and the White House laughing it off today.
Mike Memoli at the North Lawn of the White House. Mem, thank you. As the president gets ready to head overseas, he's also facing pressure here at home to do more, some of it coming from Republicans. Listen to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell today.
American strength is not a provocation. American strength secures deterrence and peace. It is American hesitancy and weakness which our adversaries see as an invitation.
But some of the pressure on the president is coming from his own party, too, like maybe to send MiGs, fighter jets, into the war zone. That's the deal that fell through last week. Congress is also working up legislation to revoke something called the permanent normal trade relations status of Russia. And some Republicans want to see the U.S. and NATO put in place a no-fly zone over Ukraine. President Zelensky definitely wants to see that. He's almost certainly going to ask Congress to back him on that front when he talks with members in less than 18 hours from now. Leanne Caldwell knows that. She's joining us now from the Hill. But, Leanne, we already know there's almost no appetite at the White House for a no-fly zone. This Polish jets proposal has already been rejected. So I ask you the same question that I asked Mem about the president's trip. As it relates to this address to Congress by Zelensky tomorrow, what can Congress realistically and actually do that would help?
So, Hallie, Republicans say that these Russian planes is extremely important, and there's a lot of Democrats that say that, too, as you mentioned. But the fact is that they are running out of tools in their toolbox. I asked the number 2 Republican in the Senate that today. What else is there for Congress and for the administration to do? And one thing they did say is sanctions, more sanctions, not only on Russians, but also sanctions against countries that are working closely with Russia, like China, for example, to make it more difficult for the Russians to operate. So there's not a lot left, but we do know that Zelensky is going to come with a very passionate plea tomorrow, and we'll see if that changes the mood at all on Capitol Hill.
That it's a hot ticket, I think, right? You've been talking to a lot of members. Are any of them not going? Like, everybody's showing up for this thing, no?
Yeah, I haven't found anyone that's not going. Everyone wants to hear what he's had to say. This is not the first time that he's addressed Congress. So in a more formal way, yes, but just a couple weeks ago, he had a closed-door Zoom meeting with members. It was on a Saturday morning, and the readout we got from that meeting was it was extremely emotional, and some of the things that he asked for then did come into effect, including a ban on oil, including increased sanctions, but the no-fly zone did not. That's also the time that he asked for these Russian planes as well. That's when that debate really started. So we'll see if he's going to be able to advance that debate tomorrow when it's a more formal setting, when it's open to the press, and when the entire Congress is going to be there, Hallie.
Listen, open to the press and also live on this network. We will be running it, Leanne. So you, all our viewers right here on NBC News Now, you will see it as it unfolds. Leanne, thank you so much. To other news out of Washington, and we'll talk more about Ukraine later in the show, but this is interesting here. Prosecutors are apparently talking with lawyers for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, you know, the accused 9/11 mastermind, for a possible plea deal that could eliminate the death penalty. That's according to the New York Times. Mohammed is one of 5 men accused of directing or training or providing travel arrangements for those 19 hijackers who crashed planes into the World Trade Center on September 11th, killing, as you know, almost 3,000 people. Guilty pleas in exchange for life sentences means that Mohammed and his 4 accomplices could avoid the death penalty. The Times says these talks started last week, but it's taken a while to get here. The case has been bogged down by legal and logistical challenges. Danny Savalos is here to break this down. Danny, help us understand this, because prosecutors fought for more than a decade to have a trial for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, for these accused accomplices. What happened? Why did something change? Why is this plea now on the table?
It could be any number of things. It could be part of a goal to give finality to victims, because you give up the possibility, although it seems remote, of an acquittal if you enter into a plea agreement, which will lock these defendants in custody for the rest of their lives with a life sentence. There are many different factors that go into discussing a plea deal. If the government is at least interested, that signals that that is something that's acceptable to them, that a life sentence is acceptable, given that the federal history of the death penalty has been a tortured one indeed. I don't mean, please excuse the pun, but it is rarely actually administered and rarely actually given out.
So, just so viewers understand, any deal would have to be approved by a senior Pentagon official known as a convening authority. Would prosecutors even be beginning these conversations, even be beginning these talks with these defendants' attorneys, if, in fact, that convening authority wasn't somewhat on board?
Yeah, not likely. You're exactly right. The convening authority is sort of like the prosecutor unit chief that everyone has to run everything through and get approval for a plea deal. It's an individual person. It sounds like it's a panel,
board of people,
convening authority, but you're only convening one human, and that human makes those decisions under the military code that governs these trials. That person also selects the jury in a manner that is very different from the way we select juries. In fact, the convening authority has almost primary authority in picking out who the jurors will be. So, yes, the convening authority plays a major role. So do the prosecutors. And, of course, so do considerations about what is best optics-wise and for the victims.
This reporting also says that the Biden administration had looked into maybe ending detention at Guantanamo Bay, where these 5 men are. If a plea deal is reached and this actually happens, what happens to Guantanamo?
Well, as it stands, Guantanamo has less than 40 inmates or custodials there at the premises. Some of them are eligible for release. Some of them are eligible for a parole-like consideration. So that leaves pretty much just these 9/11 defendants, if not a few others. So the real question will be, is it worth holding this place open for just these defendants? And even if they're convicted, do they serve their time here, or do they go to Supermax in Florence, in Colorado, or somewhere else on the mainland?
Danny Savalos, thank you so much for helping us break that down. We appreciate it. Just the last couple hours, we heard more from police about the arrest of a man suspected in the killings of homeless men in New York and D.C. 30-year-old man, long criminal and mental health history, is now in custody, charged with first-degree murder. Here's what we heard.
This case is an example of what happens when there is good police work, science, and community support. It's a demonstration of how quickly we can close homicide cases when all three of those things are working together.
Gerald Brevard was picked up at a gas station right here in Washington. Look, you can see the moment when police circled him, got him on the ground. He's suspected of shooting and killing 2 people and hurting 3 others in the district here and in New York City. Police think that includes this horrific attack over the weekend. You can see this camera showing him walking up to a sleeping man, kicking him several times. We stopped the video, of course, but police say he then pulled out a gun and shot him. They say they're working with police departments across the country to see if there are more victims. Ron Allen joins us now with more on what we learned today. So, Ron, this was a team effort, and we heard that to track him down. But so far, he's only been charged in D.C. Do we anticipate New York charges coming down?
Yes, and it's only a matter of time until they can get him to New York, and they are presenting the case to the district attorney here, and it's just a formality that he will also be charged with murder here in New York. Some other things we learned today, if you look at that picture, it's also a bus stop, and a bus that comes from New York, we understand, and that may have been what he was doing. This all started in D.C. a couple of weeks ago. He went to New York, and then he was headed back to D.C., and that's where he was arrested. He has a long criminal history. He also has a history of mental illness and spent some time in a psychiatric hospital in D.C. at one point in his life, according to his family. How did they catch him? Well, he's wearing the same clothes, apparently, when he was arrested that he had on some of the other surveillance video. There was a video of him from an ATM machine near Union Station, another train station back and forth to New York, potentially. And he also had posted a picture or something on social media that revealed that he was in D.C., the police said. So another big thing that we learned today is that there was a D.C. detective who was looking through social media, who was involved in the case down there, saw what was happening in New York and sort of connected the dots. And that's one way of many that the police in New York and D.C. got together and moved in on this guy. Just a horrific series of crimes attacking some of the most vulnerable people in society.
That's for sure. While I have you, and we're talking about New York police, they also got the suspect in an attack we showed 24 hours ago on employees at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York. What do we know about that, how they actually tracked him down?
Well, he was a member, and he had been there a few days ago and had his membership revoked because of what the police described as some destructive incidents. We don't know exactly what he was doing, but he came back a couple of days later, and you see him jumping over the counter and attacking 2 employees, both of whom were in the hospital and expected to be okay. So his motivation seems to be that his membership got revoked, and he was angry about it, and we don't quite know exactly what led to those circumstances. He was tracked down in Philadelphia, and there was some sort of fire at a hotel where he was staying at, an arson, the police described it as, and the police found him a block or 2 away on a bench somewhere, again, a couple of days later from the incident. And the police stressed through all of this, not just the cooperation between law enforcement authorities, but the fact that the public gave a lot of tips, a lot of clues. Again, both of these incidents, most of these incidents are all captured on video. And so the police had a lot to work with in terms of telling the public and showing the public who they were going after. And that's part of why they got the guy in the homeless murders and in the MoMA incident as well. So a lot of very good police work, as the officers, as the chief there said, and a lot of help from the public in solving these cases.
Ron Allen, live for us in New York on that. Ron, thank you. Coming up on the show, she's the woman some people love to hate. And for a minute, some people thought Anna Delvey, if that's how you know her, might have skipped town. So how does one lose track of the woman who scammed friends and businesses out of thousands of dollars and is set to be deported? We'll explain after the break. And if you're still having trouble today adjusting to daylight savings, the Senate has your back. Their plan to maybe lock your clocks next. Any day now, Pfizer is expected to ask the FDA for emergency authorization for a second COVID booster for people ages 65 and older. That's according to a person familiar with the plans. You know, the FDA has already authorized 1 booster shot for everybody 12 and older. Emergency use, of course, but multiple studies have shown the protection from that initial booster kind of starts to wane after several months, especially against the Omicron variant. That's, of course, the dominant variant in this country. And while Pfizer is working on more boosters, the White House wants Congress to sign off on more money for vaccines because, well, the money's running out. Those White House officials say if we wait until we see more cases, it could be hard to get ahead of any potential surges. You've got the Senate in session right now as we speak. It's expected to pass a resolution that would wind back that federal rule that makes you wear masks on planes. You know, that regulation that was just expended to the middle of next month. I want to bring in Meg Terrell to talk about all of this because, Meg, we have a bunch of COVID headlines here. And let me start with that idea of a second booster for older Americans. Number one, do we think that's going to be, happening this week? And number two, what would the impact be?
Yeah, so it sounds like Pfizer is preparing potentially to submit this package to the FDA, where essentially they're saying people at least over the age of 65 need another booster dose, so making it their 4th shot. Right now, as you mentioned, it's just cleared for people who are immunocompromised. The impact of that, if you look at Israel, could be helpful. You know, we talked with Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla on Friday, and he noted that 3 shots is very good against hospitalizations with Omicron, but the overall protection starts to wane within 3 to 4 months. And they saw in a study in Israel that protection was particularly restored among people who are over the age of 60, and that's to whom they're giving the 4th dose. And so I've talked with folks here in the U.S., like Clay Marsh, the COVID czar of West Virginia, who thinks we need to start to be thinking about doing this right now. I think he'd be happy to be hearing that this could be moving forward fairly quickly.
I bet. How about this idea of whether we're running out of money? You know, the White House is really sounding these alarm bells. It seems trying to put the pressure on Congress to be able to, get more funding to this, because their argument is we might, we're used to being able to get free vaccines, free boosters, et cetera. That may not be the reality forever, depending on funding levels.
Yeah, it's really sounding the alarm. At this time when we're feeling like COVID is in the rearview mirror, they're saying in case it's not, we need to be prepared. And the real reason to potentially need to buy more vaccine doses is if we need to update the vaccine to be targeting Omicron or another variant. Because we've got some vaccine left over right now, the original vaccine, and that's what this 4th dose would be for the elderly. But if we have to update it, they're going to have to place new orders. And if we don't have the money to do that, we're not going to be in a good position to be able to be at the front of the line.
You look at what the numbers are like over in Europe, let's say, for example, and obviously people from Europe are traveling to the U.S. and vice versa. We've got this rule right now that says you got to wear masks on planes in this country, right? The Senate might vote possibly tonight, Meg, as you know, to do away with those masks on planes. listen, it's still got to get through the House. The president probably wouldn't sign it, right, because it's his administration that's put this rule into effect. But how should we be thinking about this rule that either way comes up for another sort of decision point on April 18th?
Yeah, so the CDC has indicated that planes and other transportation corridors are different from other indoor places where essentially it says in most of the country, masks can be optional. But because there's more mixing of people, including people from other countries on planes and other places like that, they wanted to keep the masking in place for longer. And as you pointed out, we are seeing cases rise in Europe. We are seeing wastewater levels of the virus in the United States in some places start to rise. So we know that cases could be following that fairly quickly, maybe a couple weeks. People are saying we could start to see an uptick again, maybe in about 2 months, if this more contagious variant starts to take over more here as well. So it may be premature to say we should lift it everywhere. But of course, even if they do, it's going to be a matter of personal risk assessment at that point.
Meg Terrell, always great to see you. Thank you for that breakdown. So there's some new drama tonight around a drama you may have watched on Netflix, right? Fake heiress Anna Sorokin, or Anna Delvey. She's the woman who scammed friends and businesses by pretending to be a German heiress, made famous on the Netflix show Inventing Anna. So here's the deal, right? 24 hours ago, there were these reports that maybe she was deported. Her lawyer overnight said he hadn't heard from her. Everybody was like, where is she? What happened? She recently had been taken into custody for overstaying her visa after being out on parole for more than a year. She had served 4 years in prison after she was found guilty of swindling and trying to swindle banks, hotels, friends out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, well, now 24 hours later, the mystery tonight, if there ever was one, seems to be solved. Her lawyer says she is still in ICE custody in California. Steve Patterson is here with us now. Steve, you've been following this. Huge question mark yesterday, right? Like, question mark solved. Did her lawyer just, like, not panic? Or did panic when he didn't hear from her? How was it that they didn't know where she was?
So there's the simplified version and the complicated version. We'll start with the simplified version, which is that, yeah, I mean, I think her lawyer freaked out. But to put us on the path of maybe the more complicated version, because I think we need to break this down, right? We have to remember that there are multiple legal paths here. There's the criminal investigation, the criminal appeal that she has going with her one lawyer. This is the lawyer that couldn't get in contact with her all day on Monday. That's where the freakout originates from. Manny Arora, we spoke to him several times today. He does confirm she is still in federal custody, still in ICE custody here on U.S. soil. She was never deported. They filed a stay of deportation about a day ago or so. That still has to work its way through the system, and they are still fighting her being deported. But, you know, you have to remember there's an investigation into whether or not she got a COVID booster, which is part of a class action, and then there's obviously the immigration part of it as well, with a separate team of attorneys. So there's these multiple tracks of attorneys who are not kind of seemingly in communication with each other. And I think that's what led to the reporting that spread like wildfire that she may have been deported. And that comes directly from that criminal attorney, Manny Arora, who basically told us it was a 50-50 shot that she was in the country or she wasn't, because it was close to this deadline that is looming for her to be deported. So that's where we are now. Just to, again, say it all again, to simplify, she's in the country. She's still in ICE custody. She's still fighting deportation to be sent back to Germany.
She's also still a part of this class action lawsuit that you mentioned, and I want to come back to that, right? It's basically against ICE for not giving inmates COVID shots. When you look at the deportation hearing that's scheduled, how does that factor in, if at all, Steve, and it may not?
Well, just to catch people up again, she alleges that ICE refused to give her a booster shot, and then she got COVID. She got one shot of the Johnson & Johnson, the first immunization. She said she requested a booster shot. Her legal team, another team with the ACLU, says she never got that shot. She's joined onto this class action with several other plaintiffs to allege that ICE wasn't doing enough to help with the COVID situation. ICE spoke to us briefly, but the problem is they haven't made a full comment, a full statement on exactly what the situation was. They only said that they followed the rules based upon what the CDC guidelines are. We don't know necessarily what that means when it breaks down to shots. Whether or not that will trickle into this deportation, again, these are all separate paths of the law, is yet to be seen. And we just don't know enough from the ICE side to know how much will factor into, the fact that she's trying to desperately stave off deportation. I'm sure they may bring it up in a hearing or in a possible trial or however they're trying to prevent this, but it's just unclear at this point, Hallie.
Steve Patterson, doing yeoman's work there, bringing us up to speed on that. Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a key industrial city in China, Dongguan, is now under COVID lockdowns for a week because of that variant of Omicron we told you about last night, stealth Omicron. This is an area that produces something like 25% of China's exports. Those are the 2020 stats, but think about that. 1 in 4 things coming from China comes from this region. You've got now companies like Toyota and Volkswagen who say they're temporarily stopping production because of this. Number 2, the NBA is fining the Brooklyn Nets $50,000 after the team let Kyrie Irving into the locker room after Sunday's game. Irving is unvaccinated against COVID. He's not allowed to play at home games because of New York City rules and team rules. He is allowed to watch courtside as a spectator. Number 3, the Senate has approved a bill that would make daylight saving time permanent in 2023. If it passes, it means you might never have to set your clocks back again. Here's the deal. Still needs to get through the House. Still's got to get the president's signature. But hey, it's a step. Number 4, Aaron Rodgers made his return to the Green Bay Packers official today, signing a 3-year, $150 million contract. Yes, that does make him one of the highest paid players in NFL history. Number 5, poodles are back, baby, is one of the top 5 most popular dog breeds. They haven't been on that list since 1997. Labs are still top dog, according to the American Kennel's annual popularity rating. Labs have been in the top spot for 31 years. It's a good run if you have a Labrador. Next up, we've been telling you about how inflation is costing us more for just about everything. Now, more people who are paid to know about this stuff think a recession could be coming too. We'll talk about it. Plus, the numbers are staggering. The number of refugees escaping Ukraine, nearly half of them, children. We're taking you live to Poland to show you how workers are trying to help these kids forced out of their homes and their country. Coming up. The war in Ukraine has people stocking up on pills to protect them from a possible nuclear accident or attack. We'll talk about what you need to know about potassium iodide coming up. But first, the Fed is going to make a big decision tomorrow, expected to raise interest rates to try to get inflation under control. But some experts are worried that if they do that, sure, it might get a handle on inflation, but it could trigger a recession. A new CNBC Fed survey of fund managers, strategists, and economists shows the probability for an American recession in the next 12 months at 1 in 3, 33%. That's up 10% from last month. It also shows about a 50% chance of a recession in Europe. The Federal Reserve is expected to end its 2-day meeting tomorrow by raising rates 0.25 percentage point, the first increase since 2018. They'll also update their outlook for GDP and unemployment rates. CNBC's Steve Leisman joins me now to talk about this. So help us get this, Steve, as you do so well, right? Because on the one hand, the last time inflation was this high, it did push us into recession. On the other, if the Fed makes a move to try to cut inflation, we could end up in a recession anyway. Are we like on a path to a recession at this point? What's the deal?
Well, let me set the stage a little bit, if you don't mind. Right now, I hate this idea, but for the moment, forget about the war. I know it's awful and terrible. Put that to the side. We have this curious economy of very low unemployment, really strong job growth, and pretty good GDP growth. And we're coming out of the last shutdown from the Omicron wave, right? So all that's pretty good. But you have to layer in the fact that even before we get to the war here, that you had high prices going in for a variety of reasons. The Fed was probably too easy. The Biden and the Trump administrations both together probably shoved too much money into the economy. You had supply shutdowns. People were buying too many goods. So you had high inflation ahead of time. Now layer in the war. What does the war do? The war raises prices further, and it further creates the question about what happens to demand and the growth of the economy. So it's a huge amount of uncertainty. I think what the Fed is going to do here is, for lack of another better term, fight the battle in front of it. And that battle is it knows it has an inflation problem. It knows it's too low. How low it doesn't know. So it's going to move very incrementally and say, you know what? I know I got to do this. I know I got to do that. And I know I do the thing after that. But how much further? It doesn't know, because it needs to wait and see how this whole horrible war that is affecting, obviously, the individual Ukrainians, and then it's going to affect the economies of Europe and the United States. So it doesn't know, so it's going to move slowly, but it will be raising rates to combat inflation.
I know you're not a financial advisor, but can you explain a little bit about how people should be thinking about their own money, right? The money in their bank accounts, in their 401ks, if they have investments, et cetera, if the Fed does, as we expect, raise rates?
Well, I can tell you what I've done, which is absolutely nothing. I maybe think about coming in some days and committing a little bit of stock. I'm too busy right now to think about my portfolio, which I'm trying to cover the Fed and what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now, and actually globally. It's definitely not a time to panic if you have a long-term horizon. I would just kind of wait this out, keep investing as you've been investing. You can't time the market. It doesn't work very well. I think the market, here's what you could know, is that depending upon, again, what happens with this huge, horrible unknown of the war, depending on what happens with that, we've already stomached in the market a lot of the tightening and the contraction that the Fed wants us to. The 2-year note is up by a full 1.4 percentage points. The 5-year note's up by a full percentage point. When the Fed says it's going to do something, the market pretty much prices it in immediately before it does it. So the quarter point you're going to get tomorrow, the market's going to yawn at that and say, we knew that.
Okay.
The quarter point it's going to get in May, market's going to yawn in that. Hey, we knew about that. What's going to happen tomorrow is the Fed's going to show us what it thinks about the 6 months beyond what the market's already priced in. That's the game tomorrow. The Fed's going to put down some cards, and we're going to say, oh, were those the cards I was expecting you to? Do you have a full house, or do you have a flush? What do you have? So they're going to look at that and say, okay, I see where you're going with this. I see how you're thinking about this. And tomorrow, the markets, the stock market and the bond market, will come to an agreement with the Fed on what the right pricing is. And I say agreement, it's with quotes around it. Right. They're not really going to agree, but they're going to price themselves to, oh, Powell's telling me this, the Fed's telling me that. Right. I'm going to bring stocks up to this level or down to that level because of where the Fed's thinking of going.
I hope that you're around tomorrow to help us read those cards on the table, Steve, because it's hugely helpful, seriously, to have you breaking this down and explain this to us. So thank you.
I'm glad to help. Yeah, and I hope it's a flush.
Steve, me too. Thank you. You know, one of the things that Steve was talking about, right, is this horrific war in Ukraine, obviously having an impact on the global economy. But as he said, it is having an impact every single day on individual people, right? The refugees, the people who are leaving Ukraine. And there are millions of them now, 3 million of them, according to official estimates. And half of them are kids. It's shocking. It's actually shocking when you get down to the numbers and get really specifics. 75,000 kids a day. That's a kid every second. That's a kid every second who becomes a refugee living in another country. 30 kids since I started talking about this segment, right? It's disrupting some of the stuff that we take for granted every day, just like going to school. You're looking at kids from Ukraine and Belarus sitting alongside Polish students. They're trying to get some sense of stability with everything else going on, right? Some sense of normalcy, of getting back to class, trying to get into those routine rhythms when everything is absolutely not normal. Ellison Barber is in Poland. And Ellison, you've been covering this. You've been talking with some of those kids. How do you even go into a classroom as a kid and think about your schoolwork, or even think about like play when you've escaped your home, right? When your home is under attack by Vladimir Putin?
I mean, it is hard to fathom, and that's one of the things as we have been to so many different border crossings and then now into the city. When we're talking to these kids, it is just a range of it's mind-blowing how young a lot of them are and how so many of them don't really process what is going on. Right. Their parents will talk to us about how they hope they never remember it, right? But then you have kids who are in this age where they are very aware of what's happening, and they're in this new country. They feel afraid. They feel alone. And sometimes I know it seems like school is not something that every kid wants to do, but for a lot of these kids, the ones we've spoken to today, this is kind of a lifesaver because it really gives them a sense of normalcy, a moment of just learning math and learning it among their peers. And in this particular case, what they're doing here is it's a class where they're putting other Ukrainian students with them. So they sort of have this safety net, this commonality amongst people where if they're struggling with learning Polish, they can turn to their friend and they can talk. Other teachers are in the class who also speak Ukrainian. And it's a really, really big deal. We met a girl today who is 12 years old. And I asked her, when did you first move to Poland? And she told me about a week ago. And I asked her just, what do you like about school? And her answer was so simple. It was just math. She wants to be home, but she can't be. So instead, she's glad to at least be in class for a little while. Listen to some of what they told us.
At home, we left all the clothes, our grandfather, our grandmother, cats and dogs. And now it's a bit hard for me to be here because I want to go back home.
You know, one thing that I think I will always remember from covering this is how quickly war makes children grow up. We met a girl at the border a few days ago who was 16 years old, and I asked her, just, do you feel like you've had to grow up a lot in the last 2 weeks? And she said yes, and she talked about how at night she goes back and looks at her other photos, her old videos, TikToks, just very normal teen stuff she was doing 2 weeks ago, and in an instant it went from that, dreaming of being an actress, to helping her younger 12-year-old sister get out of their home in Kyiv and telling her, don't look up, just run to the train. I mean, this is the trauma that comes from this is beyond words, but one little glimmer of hope is that classroom, the schools that we have seen today, where they are offering kids not only a chance to just be educated, but to do it amongst people who maybe have experienced something like they have.
You're so
Hallie.
right, Ellison. You know, and I look at these images and I see the story that you're telling, and like I said, these kids are not thinking about Vladimir Putin, right? Their parents are. They're not. They're thinking about what is right in front of them. And I also think about the leaders in Poland, the people in Poland. Do they have the resources? Because these schools have got to, and they are taking these kids in, helping them, right? Do they have what they need at this point? How has the transition been at this point?
So it's a struggle, and what we've heard from leaders here in Krakow and also Warsaw, the two biggest cities in Poland, is that they've had this massive influx of people coming to this city. They kind of know this city. They feel like it is close enough to go home as soon as possible, which is what most refugees want to do, that they're not wanting to leave these major cities. What the problem is that it's straining resources, big picture. It's not just about, do you have beds available? It's, do you have enough room at your schools to teach children if they're staying here for an extended period of time? Do you have enough health care options, things like that? And I will show you quickly this map because, Hallie, this is all around the train stations here. They're trying to encourage people to go to these other cities in Poland where they have more resources available, because there's so many people here that the short answer is they don't have enough resources. They're getting by right now, but they're really starting to struggle.
But is there
Hallie?
a plan in place as you hold up that map, Ellison, to actually get those people to those other places? Like, are they helping them with trains and with, transportation?
So they're working, yes. That's the huge thing, right? You have to have transportation to get there. We've seen a noticeable shift being in this city in the last 2-3 days of there being a much more coordinated effort by local officials here to provide transportation and get people on those trains. Volunteers, we've seen them coordinating that at the train station to get people to these other areas where 2 days ago it was just sort of like people were on their own. So there are steps, and it's slow, and when you're in a crisis, it's never fast enough. But the government here is starting to work, seems better, with volunteer groups to get people on trains and buses to these other cities.
We're so glad to have
Hallie.
you there, Ellison. We're so glad to have you bringing these stories to us. Thank you. Ellison Barber in Poland. Back here at home, Americans seem to be stocking up on potassium iodine tablets because of fears of radiation poisoning from maybe a nuclear incident brought on by this war in Ukraine. Listen to this. Companies that make these pills say they can protect the thyroid from radioactive fallout if there is a nuclear disaster. That means these $14 packets are selling online for, guess how much? Like $150, if you can even find them. Potassium iodide is approved by the FDA after being exposed to radioactive iodine, which can happen after a nuclear disaster. The Chernobyl meltdown back in 1986, by far the worst nuclear accident ever, led to this huge release of radioactive iodine in Ukraine. Scientists say that led to a big number of thyroid cancer cases in the region. Now you've got some people spooked that Russian troops now control that radioactive waste facility at Chernobyl. Let me bring in Dr. Kavita Patel to talk about all this. Dr. Patel, the CDC says taking too much potassium iodide can be dangerous. It is, world leaders are working to ensure that there is not a nuclear disaster as a result of this war. Can you talk to us about this pill, what it does, what it doesn't do, why it matters?
Yeah, absolutely, Hallie. And it's understandable that people have fears. Just watching the news makes all of us think about this. Here's what potassium iodide does. Iodine is a naturally occurring element that we actually need. It's one of the largest causes of nutritional deficiencies in the world. That's why if you think about that salt bottle you buy, it has iodine added to it because we need it. Potassium iodide, those pills that are selling like hotcakes, replaces, if you have exposure to radioactive iodine, any of the bad iodine associated with radiation. So think of the potassium iodide as kind of coating your thyroid and preventing the radioactive iodine from infecting, kind of getting in there and causing cancer, which is what you're alluding to after Chernobyl. By the way, we see increased purchasing even after threats when President Trump in 2020 made some comments about nuclear fallout, as well as in 2018. So we see these spikes when there is threats, even perceived threats. It is something, you're right, though. Do not take it. The CDC and the EPA are monitoring radiation levels all around the world so that we have to take it when we need it, but not now.
Is there any risk that people who might actually need it could not get it because of this sort of stockpiling?
It's a great point, Hallie. And you know what? I actually made sure and refreshed. This is part of our strategic national stockpile for the United States. So good news. We do have it in case we suffered from any nuclear fallout, and we should have enough supply. Generally speaking, kind of one tablet is enough to protect the thyroid for about 24 hours. So you can imagine that people are probably not even buying quote unquote the right amount, which is why it's not encouraged to just go out on eBay and try to get what you can. But yes, we do for the United States and hopefully for much of the world have stockpiled this important natural element. The key is when to use it, how to use it, and for how long to use it. You can't just take it today for 5 days for radiation for 5 months from now because it won't work then. And that's one reason not to do it.
Dr. Kavita Patel, thanks for that. Appreciate the smart breakdown. Coming up, some people in California want to declare one Chick-fil-A a public nuisance. Why the restaurant is ruffling their feathers. We said it. We did it. We said it. That's coming up in the local. The biggest games in college basketball are tipping off tonight. It is March Madness. It is here. And this year, it's the women taking up a big share of the spotlight. We're going to explain coming up. But first, NBC covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, New Jersey is covering up every trace of Vladimir Putin's name from a 9/11 memorial that was a gift from Russia. Look at this. The teardrop memorial was dedicated by Putin in 2005. It's got his name on it, which was first covered up by gaffer's tape when the country invaded Ukraine. Now it's been replaced by a more permanent acrylic board. Our West Coast Bureau is reporting Santa Barbara is considering declaring a Chick-fil-A a public nuisance. City officials say the drive-thru is so bad. Look at this line. The backup there is so long, it blocks an entire lane of traffic for more than 90 minutes on Saturdays. They say, hey, that means you could have more accidents. Santa Barbara City Council will give Chick-fil-A 90 days to figure out a solution before voting on whether they should call it a public nuisance. Finally, from our Washington Bureau, the Coast Guard in Maryland is trying to get a container ship out of the mud after it ran aground in the Chesapeake Bay. Look at this. It got stuck Sunday night after leaving Baltimore. And listen to this. It's the sister ship of the one that got stuck in the Suez Canal last year. Now officials say it's not just about getting the ship unstuck, but making sure it can still sail once it is. President Biden is announcing some new steps to try to end the gender pay gap for federal workers and contractors on this equal pay day. Because, yes, today is equal pay day. Did you know? He's signing an executive order to get the government to think about not letting federal contractors get the salary history of somebody who's applying for a job. That's really important when it comes to these kinds of things because, you know, sometimes for women who are paid less, it's tough to negotiate for a raise if you have to say what your prior salary was. And if you're wondering why equal pay day is today, it's because it would take a woman until March 15th of this year to catch up to what a man earned in 2021. In 2020, the average woman working full-time all year earned 83 cents on the dollar compared to her male counterpart. That is why we have an equal pay day. There's a push for equality when it comes to March Madness, too, between men and women, with the first games of the NCAA tournament set to tip off. And this year, for the first time, the men and women's tournaments are actually working together. You know why? Remember this? Look at this big reason for the change. From last year's tournament, on the left, that's the weight room for the men in Indianapolis. Gorgeous. Look at all that equipment. On the right, That is the women's facility in San Antonio. Do you notice a difference? Do you spy a difference in that? Yeah, the women did too, and that is not the only example. The women's tournament was not even allowed to use the phrase March Madness. According to the Wall Street Journal, the NCAA did not let women use the branding, even though it owned the right to use it for both tournaments, both the men and the women. This outside legal review found that men were prioritized for everything from broadcast rights to sponsorships to distribution of revenue coming in. Megan Fitzgerald is joining us now with more. So, Megan, hopefully the good news is that it's not going to be a repeat of last year, right, when we noticed those really big differences and there was this major backlash against it. So, upgrade-wise, what are women going to notice right away when they tip off on their side?
All right, so the first thing that we'll notice is that the signage of the women's tournament will be boosted. As you mentioned, that March Madness branding, now the women are able to use that as well. Also, we know that 4 teams have been added to the tournament, mirroring that of the men's 68-team bracket. And then they have more people working on the women's tournament. So these are just some of the steps, Hallie, that they're trying to make to try and level the playing field here.
What's the reaction from some of the players, some of the coaches? What are we hearing?
Yeah, so I've been talking to some coaches and some players today. Many of them say, listen, this is something that is a big deal. They are excited about these changes, but they say, look, make no mistake about it. There is still a long way that this league, this tournament, this NCAA has to do to make sure that the women are equal to that of the men, Hallie.
Let's talk about money. And let me pull up a graphic here because the NCAA says the total net income for the men back in 2019 was like $900 million. The women's tournament lost nearly $3 million. Is it your sense, if based on the people that you're talking to, that these changes might help close that gap? You know, might help, because frankly, those numbers are not a reflection necessarily of interest. It's a reflection of promotion and the muscle that is put into each of those tournaments.
Yes. You hit the nail on the head, and that's absolutely the hope, that these changes will help increase the momentum and increase the revenue. But look, you know, there's a massive fan base around these women's teams. In the last 8 years, the Final Four sold out 7 of those 8 years. So a lot of fans, the point here is just that these changes will hopefully not only increase the momentum, as I mentioned, but also increase the revenue that's coming in, Hallie.
And so much of it, too, is about the storylines and the narrations, right, promoted around some of these teams. Who's the Cinderella story? Who's like the underdog really trying to take a shot? The women's tournament has that, too, in spades some years.
Hallie, you got to repeat that. I'm sorry. I lost that last
That's
question.
okay. I was just saying, you know, a lot of this, too, is about the narrative and around the storyline around these teams, like the Cinderella team or the underdog team. And that is not exclusive to just the men.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, you know, we see this each year. In fact, you know, I even talked to a lot of men today, too, because I wanted to get both sides of this. And they said, you know what, I'm even more so excited and looking forward to watching the women play. There's a difference sometimes, you know, and so I think that the biggest takeaway, I think, from this season is just that things just need to be fair. Women are working just as hard out there as the men. And this is an opportunity for their efforts to be on display. This is the championship tournament. This is something that people look forward to each year. And so this year, now it's just going to be a little bit more equitable, Hallie.
Megan Fitzgerald, we're so glad to have you on this story. Thank you so much. I hope you filled out your brackets. I think you're out of time, but good luck. That does
Absolutely.
it for us for this hour. We're going to have more for you here tomorrow. Same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now. See you then.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.